What's up? It's May the 5th, or Revenge of the 5th, if you're a big Star Wars fan, and hope you guys are doing all right on this Monday. Happy Monday. Today I want to talk about a scapegoat. Okay, scapegoat is something we've heard that phrase a lot. You know, she's a scapegoat, he's a scapegoat, whatever. But let's look at where this came from, okay, a scapegoat, and what it represents, even in our lives daily, about forgiveness. In Jewish history, they used to take a goat, and they would take it and put all to the rabbi, and they would put all its sins. They would put forehead to forehead and transfer the sins into this goat. And they would take this goat outside of town to a cliff, and they would push it off the cliff to its demise, and that's so it would perish at the bottom of the cliff. Therefore, the sins of the area, the sins of the people would be done with and forgotten. Why they did this was because they did not want the goat to wander around the wilderness and eventually come back into town, because they're afraid the sins would come back with it into the synagogues, into the homes, into the village, or whatever, into the town square, bring the sins back with it to the area. So it's very important about this because, you know, when you have unforgiveness in your heart, it's kind of like this, because if you forgive somebody, if somebody's wronged you, no matter who it is, and they've wronged you very badly, and you say, I forgive them wholeheartedly, and in your heart you mean that, you forgive them, that scapegoat is now in their court, in their home, in their dwelling of their own personal being. If they do not let that go, that's going to stay with them and fester with them, and then it becomes more and more things. It becomes bitterness, unforgiveness, all these things stay with it, and that's part of that scapegoat staying with them, where you have got it out of your dwelling, out of your life, because you forgive them. Now, if we look at this, I have to read my notes on this because this is very in-depth about Christ. And it says, when Jesus was on the cross, he prayed, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And that verse represents forgive means to send forth, and to put away. In Moses' day, it was remitting of sin. On the Day of Atonement, we refer to sending forth the scapegoat away from the people into the wilderness. When Christ was on the cross making atonement for humankind and asking God to forgive his accusers, he was actually asking God to remit the sins of his enemies in the same manner that the high priest would have sent the atoning goat into the wilderness of Judea. So, and it says, after Christ's resurrection, he commanded his disciples to be willing to forgive others. He said, whosoever sins ye remit, they are remitted unto them. And whoever sins you retain are then retained unto them. So, and it says, the analogy of the scapegoat is the Day of Atonement. Christ was basically saying that if we forgive a person, that we have removed the goat from our presence, like I said a minute ago, and is now in that person's house. That it's up to them to forgive and remove the goat completely. So, you know, unforgiveness and forgiveness is a big thing. And that's where the term scapegoat comes from. You know, there's also a term Judas goat. You know, there's a Judas goat, and they use that because Judas was like a scapegoat for when they came to arrest Christ. So, you know, forgiveness it leads to a lot of things. You know, sometimes it will lead to infirmities in your body. It will lead to a lot, because it will fester and bring in other things with it. And, you know, there's so many people out there, even Christians, that cannot forgive people. And they cannot forgive because, you know, their parents hurt them, or their family member hurt them, or a friend hurt them. They can't forgive. And that's, you know, Christ wants us to forgive because he forgave us, right? And it says 70 times 7, keep forgiving these people. So it doesn't mean you have to hang out with them. It doesn't mean you have to call them on the phone and ask them out to dinner. No, but you have to forgive them. To remove that scapegoat out of your home, put it in their court, and if they forgive you, and that's it. That's the end of the scapegoat. He's gone off the cliff and to met his demise. But if they don't, or if you don't, it sits with you in your life. It will fester and become other things. So I hope you learned something today about this, where the phrase scapegoat comes from. Pretty interesting.